So today that we're going to have a look at the trust spiral. You will not be able to research and find anything about this trust spiral because it is a spiral that I developed as a result of a 7-year longitudinal survey. I did other survey and findings from that survey, but this came from a research that I did, a piece of research that I was doing, and it took me 7 years to do that research and get these findings. So this is quite groundbreaking research. And according to some of the head people that I've spoken to around the globe, it is the only collaborative-based trust model in the world. So I'm very privileged that to be able and honoured to be able to share it with you. So you'll notice that it's a spiral. And the reason that it's a spiral is because trust is one of those things that you transcend but include. So in other words, when we start looking at each of the 7 stages, I will say to you, you cannot go through to the next stage until you've actually been through the previous stage. Now, how long you stay in each of these stages depends on the relationship. So you will see that this spiral is a relationship-based spiral. So it's not about whether you trust a system, and how many of us have challenges with technology systems, and I've found the best technology IT person on the coast, and I am so blessed to have found him, and I can ring him up and say, hey Stephen, and he goes, thank you very much, and fixes it for me. So I'm not technologically competent, and this is not about a system or a technology, this is about trust in people, because that's the most difficult thing to get to know to trust. So you will see that there are 7 levels of trust. But the first thing to understand is distrust. So let me ask you, why do you distrust somebody? Why do you distrust somebody? Some people will say to me, it's a gut feeling. And they're doing a lot of research at the moment to say that your gut is your second brain and that you should listen to it, and that they are connected. So apparently that intuition, gut feeling is usually really quite strong, and it's more strong in some people than in other people. So it's actually some research that I'm doing at the moment to try and validate that. So why do we distrust people? We don't know initially why we distrust people. There was just some reason. Later on, if you've been further up the spiral with other people and then you come to distrust them because of a reason, we'll have a look at those reasons, but you will understand you distrust them for a specific reason or reasons, but initially when you meet them, you don't know why you distrust. You'll say, I don't know, there's just something about that person. You ever done that in your own mind? You might not have expressed it, but there's just something in your mind that says, I don't know what it is, but I don't trust this person. Then there's a neutral form of trust. A neutral form of trust is usually in a social setting. It's where you don't know yet. You haven't met the person. This is where some of the chambers of commerce have the coffee chats, because they might see somebody and you might see them here, and right now you don't know these people. So there's sort of like this neutral type of thing. I've heard your name, I've heard your business. You might trust some people because you've connected with them before, and I know at least 2, 4, 5 people that I've had interactions with before, so there's a higher level of trust for me in that. Other people that I have interacted with. So you start to develop this process. Tell me if I stand in the middle of it. But there's a neutral type of thing. You're not sure yet. How much do I tell this person because I'm not sure yet? Now, the reason that we're starting with this program with trust is to be able to set the parameters. Now, the parameters are, you will have heard that everybody says, I'm here to try and build my business. Now, we will also have opportunities on the alternate week to ask questions about our business. The only way you are going to be able to grow your business and learn things that are absolutely relevant to you is to share your information. But the only way you can share your information is if you get Chatham House rules, and Chatham House rules is where you know how men say what happens on holiday stays on holidays? I would like your agreement that whatever happens and says in this room stays in this room in relation to the specifics. So whatever goes outside is what you apply, so then you can apply those things, but please ensure that if you have some detail of someone's business, that it is given in a trusting way to understand that they're putting it out there and it's used there for them to learn and for you to learn. So it's a big ask, absolutely a big ask, to have so many people here and say, hey look, you're sitting in a neutral spot and now I want to progress you right up the spiral. But when you understand the spiral, you'll understand how you can build and develop that. And through the process, if you feel that you need to say, look, I'm going to put something pretty sensitive here, I would like to respect what we said on that first day, that everyone understands what we are talking about here. So you have a neutral form of trust. That's the best picture I could find for neutral, by the way. How many of you have had a situation where they've said, hey Karen, by the way, this is Karen, and I knew she was going to be like, hey Karen, you should do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. You should apply for the Sunshine Coast Business Women's Awards. You are doing a fantastic job and you should apply for them. And how many of you go, why? Why should it be me? Or sometimes so-and-so has nominated me or put me forward for a job. Do you think I should go for it? Do you think that I should? How many of you have actually had those thoughts at some stage? Do I think? Yeah? I reckon every one of us could put their hands up. Why should it be me? But it's never why should it be me for the good stuff, for the bad stuff. It's all why should it be me for the good stuff. Until you have confidence in yourself, no matter how much you're trying to make those butterflies fly in formation inside, no matter what it is that makes you get up and go and be in your business, if you do not have trust in yourself, you will never be able to trust other people and you will never be able to grow your business because you will always be second guessing yourself. So instead of saying, why should it be me? You say, why not? And let me give you an example. I have been very fortunate to work with some amazing people around the world. One of the most amazing people was a guy called Dr. Dong Beck, who did the reformation of apartheid in South Africa, and he invited me, along with 20 other people from around the world, to develop a paper for the UN. I also co-lectured with him at a university in America. I mean, pretty phenomenal stuff. I didn't say, why me? I went, oh my God, okay, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm not telling him that. Yeah, look, you just tell me what you need and I'll sort it out. And it was just a phenomenal experience. And I was embraced, and there's another guy called Ichak Adiz, who runs the Adizes Institute, which talks about corporate life cycles. And I've had the opportunity to work with Ichak, and another fellow called Yoshihoko Ginko Kimura, who's a beautiful philosopher. He's a Japanese-born American, and I've had the opportunity to work with him. Why? Because I didn't say, oh, why me, I can't do that. I've actually said, oh yeah, tell me what you need, and inside going, oh gosh, I hope they tell me, because I actually have no idea, but I feel very fortunate they said me. So the first thing about belief is self-belief, and then if you self-belief, then you self-trust. Because if we don't have belief in ourselves and we don't trust ourselves, how can we expect other people to do it? Now, I just came back from doing some work in Vanuatu, and I was doing some stuff for the Ministry of Education over there, but I spent some time in the market with the women in the market, and they have this beautiful song which they sang to me, and I've got it videoed if anyone wants to see it. But they are sitting there in their market and they don't have self-confidence. It's a developing country and they don't have self-confidence, and you can see it. A tourist walks up to the store and says, how much is this? And they go, oh, it's not confident enough to say the price because they're not sure whether the tourist is going to pay that price. So because they're not confident, what do you think if someone ums and ahs before they tell you the price? that you can negotiate. Keegan? They lower it. So the point being is, understand that the person that's going to come and buy something from you, if you don't have trust yourself or you haven't got confidence in yourself, they're not going to have a confidence and you won't have any opportunity at all to grow your business. So critical, trust yourself. And how many of you, if someone gets it wrong and apologises and then over-services you, forgives them? I do. Yep. Because every one of us make a mistake. And it's not about making a mistake, it's about learning from it. So if you make the mistake and learn from it and over-service the person, then you grow from that process. The next level up the spiral is a transaction-based trust. Transaction-based trust is where it's a bit like the banks. Banks are a transaction-type trust. You exchange something. That's it, it's a transaction. So many times there's transaction-based trusts in a perception of what you want to get and then you receive it. Transaction type trusts is becoming more and more critically important the more that we do online communications, online shopping, online buying. Because we're getting to such a mega space in the Shopify, Clarify, buy everything online type fi, that you put trust in whatever you see up there. And I trialled this once. I saw this, what looked like a magnificent dress. Now, you know we all buy from their heart, not from the mind. So the heart said, that's a gorgeous piece of fabric, isn't it magnificent? And the mind's going, get real, Brenda. Can't be that beautiful, it only costs that amount. And the heart's going, but you'd really like to wear it, wouldn't you? How many of you have these debates with yourself? Hey? This is the transaction that you're about to enter. So when you start looking at it, so I bought it. I thought, oh, it doesn't matter, it didn't cost that much, I'll buy it. Well, it took forever to get here. That's all right. And then it arrived. What do you think happened? It was terrible material. I'm a very tactile person. I touch things all the time. I have to know what it feels like. And it felt horrible, really horrible. And so what happened is, in any transaction-based trust perspective, you create for yourself an expectation. You create an expectation of what you expect to be delivered by the other person. And so there will be a transaction. The best example of transaction-based trust, although it's underpinned with documents, is contract law. Offer, acceptance, consideration. That's a transaction. You offer to purchase your home. You sign a contract with that offer, the other person accepts it after you sort of go backwards and forwards a bit and decide how much it's worth and how much you're prepared to pay, because something's only worth something what someone else is prepared to pay for it. You come to a figure. Then the real estate agent says to you, we need a deposit. So what the deposit is, it's not that they need the money. The deposit, what it does is create an environment where you have commitment to your transaction. So because you have that deposit, offer, acceptance, consideration is the money, so you have put down there that you're going to confirm that they can trust you, that you're going to go through that with that transaction. It's a transaction-based trust. So it's really, one gives, one takes. And then there's a return. So give and take. Transaction-based trusts are when you go and buy things from the store, or you ask someone to do something. Hey, look, here's a document, can you edit it for me? I expect X, Y, and Z. They come back and do it. So it's usually one single cycle. That's your transaction-based trust. Integrity. going to ask you to answer this. No, I'm going to ask you to write it down first on the blank piece of paper, on your side bit of paper there. Give me what you think is your definition of integrity. What is integrity? Okay, usually often I'll have a little softball and I'll throw it at somebody and they'll volunteer. Because they don't know when I throw it, and then you volunteer someone else. But because I haven't got my applets up there or a softball, can someone, and there's not a right or wrong here, I'm using this as an example. Can someone give me what they've got as their definition of integrity?
To do something the right way and the honest way.
The right and honest way? Yep, thanks Melissa.
Doing what you say you're going to do when and how you said you'll do it with your best effort and ability.
Yeah. Yep.
To say what you mean and mean what you say.
Say what you mean and mean what you say. Yep. Anyone else?
Yep, to have ethics and morals and a clear conscience and have a sleep test, which is can I sleep at night with this?
Can I sleep at night with this?
Doing what you say you would do without self-interest.
Interesting, you've got a without self-interest in there. Yeah.
That they can be trusted.
So, integrity-based trust is doing what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, to the standard and quality that is expected of the transaction. And I'll give you an example. Many times people will say, I need it by, and I used to have this philosophy, if I ask for anything from my staff, I always ask for it for a day early. Because you never knew what went on in the background, family issues, tiredness, partying, all those sorts of things, that said, I will give it to you on this day. And we all know that either from ourselves or from our family, that many people who study the night before, or they put the assignment in 10 minutes before it's due. Because many people work to deadlines. It's just that they give themselves a false deadline. And giving yourself that false deadline means that the quality and standard is not there. So it's not just about doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. Integrity is also about quality. The integrity of the product. Because the integrity of the product is about your reputation. So if you want to develop a reputation in relation to integrity-based trust, it's a two-way process. Now, I'll give you an example. There was a lady that I was coaching, and she said to me one time, oh, Brenda, she said, they never get anything right. I always have to fix it up before I submit it. To which I said to her, I'm going to call her Tina, that's not her name, but I'm going to call it because that's what came to my mind. I said, Tina, why don't they give it to you correctly? And she said, I don't know, but they never do. I said, can I talk to them to find out? What do you think happened? I did. She said, yes, you can talk to them. She had 5 or 6 staff. What do you think happened? Have a go. Yep.
Set expectations.
She didn't set expectations.
What she wants.
No, she did actually. Yep, good go though, because a lot of people don't set the expectation. Oh, look, just do anything. And they do anything. No, that's not good enough. Well, that's what you told me to do and I did it. Why isn't it good enough? Okay, why else?
Maybe they didn't know that they were doing a poor job.
You're pretty spot on. You're pretty spot on in the sense that what happened was she had such a lack of self-awareness. It wasn't self-belief, it was self-awareness. She believed that she had to mark up or edit or change everything that they did. So if the quality of work was there when she started as their boss, supervisor, whatever you like to call it, leader, after a period of time it was going down and down and down. And what do you think they said to me when I talked about why that was happening? What do you think they said? Sorry? She never lets me do it? What else?
They thought everything was fine.
No feedback? they simply said, well, it doesn't really matter what our standard is. We can do our best job or our worst job, but she will always find a reason to change it. So why should we put in an extra effort and get it the best? Because she will never recognise that it's the best. So understand, when you're looking at doing what you say you're going to do, when you say you're going to do it, to the best standard, that you also have that framework as an expectation when you give it to somebody else to do as a transaction, or you're getting it from somebody else. So, as I said, Ben from Innovate Media, who I think is just wonderful, because he does this, and I say, hey Ben, that looks fantastic, but I didn't like the bit at the end, can you chop that off and can you take this bit out while I was drinking my cup of tea, is that okay? And he'll come back and say, hey Brenda, look, I'm happy to take the last bit off, but if I take the cup of tea bit out, well, it doesn't quite fit. Okay, so, you know, there was the expectations of how much it is and what's going to be delivered. And you heard me, I say Stephen is best IT guy on the coast. I believe he's the best IT guy on the coast. How many of you have had a challenge with your IT people because you've given them what you thought was the right thing and they just didn't deliver? I'm going to put both hands up because I had 10 years of that on this coast. And you know what? It is not endemic here. It is everywhere. And why is it everywhere? I'll tell you why it's everywhere. Because in their industry they speak a different language. So they do. We all speak a different language in our industry. And even within the industry we speak different languages. Because what we call something, they will call something else. And we're not the only people who have had that trouble. You can see what happened with Queensland Health that time, and now Brisbane City Council is handing out millions and millions and millions because they've had the same thing. I only use IT as an example because everybody seems to have that challenge with the IT. So, when you are building integrity-based trust and you want the standard and quality that is required, ensure that you have that little discussion that builds the relationship or starts to build the relationship in relation to that collaborative process. And so it says things like, oh, I'm not sure what you mean when you said. And you know what happens? It's a translation of the communication as well. I'll just write an email, it's much easier. No, it's not. How about you have a chat? I have a joint venture with the International Division of the Sunshine Coast University, and one of the support staff there sent me an email. Hey Brenda, can you help me find, and she gave me the details, and I emailed her back and said, Beck, I'll ring you because it's much easier to tell you. And it was. But we fail to realise that sometimes that it is much easier, because when they use these words that you think, ask them, because then your expectation and standard is going to be according to your budget, not outside your budget, because what you thought they said and what they actually said, they thought they said, were diametrically opposed or different. So what do you mean by? Please explain to me. I don't understand that. That gets you the quality, and the quality underpins the integrity. Integrity-based trust. How am I going? You keeping up? Is your head going all right? Can you relate? Great. Okay. Now, if we have a look at it, the next part of trust is a collaboration type trust. And there's three phases to this, or trifaceted if you like. There's three phases because when you start to work with and deal with people in relation to trust, you can't do it all by yourself. You always need to include one or more other people. And Maria, who's sitting down the back, is a hairdresser. You have to start to trust your hairdresser, don't you? So when we start looking at trust, let me say to you there's three types, or it's a trifaceted process in relation to collaborative-based trust. And collaborative-based trust is about building relationships. And one of the phenomenal things that I absolutely love on the Sunshine Coast is the way that everything is built on relationships, which is a hard thing when you first come here. Sorry, I don't remember your name.
Ellie.
Ellie. and Ellie is establishing her business. She hasn't been here long, is that right? And someone else was establishing a business that hasn't been here long. Your name again? Wendy. And so you'll notice this, that everyone says, oh, well, that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so, because it is built. The whole Sunshine Coast, according to Bernard Salt, is the entrepreneur capital of Australia. But it's also built on this collaborative-based trust, where I got a text. I was away and I got a text from a colleague of mine who was going to be here today, but unfortunately she can't. And she said, hey Brenda, do you know someone who, from the Gubbi tribe that can do the welcome to country? It's that type of thing. Do you know someone who? How many of you who've been here, say, longer than 3 years, has asked someone else that question and gone on to use that person? Yeah. So remember, what you're doing there is that you're trusting somebody else under a collaborative-based trust process. So let's have a look at this tri-collaboration. Do you like my flower, by the way? I love flowers. Okay, collaborative personal. Collaborative personal is your first type of trust. You have sufficient trust in the other person that you will collaborate with them. Now, this is a really critical stage in trust, very critical, because one of the things about collaborative-based trust, there also goes an underpinning, just like two sides of a sandwich. The other side is reputation. Because whoever you collaborate with, you're aligning your reputation with. Whoever you collaborate with, you're aligning your reputation with. Because the three types of trust, your trifaceted collaboration trust, is about building your business. So when you try to build your business, you try and build your reputation. And so when you don't use someone who's got that, it actually negates from your reputation. And I'm going to pick on the poor IT guys again, and there's some fantastic ones around, I know there are. But we have become so dependent on transactions through the internet, online shopping, emails, attaching documents. Poor lady who's just been appointed as CEO of Australia Post, she'll have to build up more online shopping situations, because how long is it since you've got to post something from the post? Ages. So what happens is, when you start to look at collaborative-based trust, you also, when looking at a collaborative-based impact on your reputation. So Jaya, can I pick on you? Thank you. Jaya is the head photographer in her business. She has other photographers who go out and work with her as well. You all have staff. But I'm picking on Jaya because you think about, if she has a wedding, she does fantastic portraits, by the way. If she has a wedding to do, or two weddings to do, she has to be able to align herself and have a collaboration with someone else who will take those photos. They will be fantastic photos, and she is proud to put her logo on those photos. That is collaborative-based trust. What do you think happens? And we all know what happens when you align yourself with someone and they don't do the right job, particularly if it's a wedding. Now, let me assure you, I know a fellow, and he's not on the Sunshine Coast, who was a photographer for a wedding that was a large wedding. I think they had 1,000 guests, and he took the photography and he lost the photos. I have not heard the outcome. I don't ask. However, what do you think Will did, whatever happened to that fellow's wedding photography business? No longer exists. What about his reputation when he decides to go and work for somebody else? So what happens is, it's not only your business, it's your person as well. So be aware, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I am saying when you've got personal based trust, what you need to be aware of is that it is usually beyond, and it is actually beyond. Now you can see how I'm saying with this spiral. So you've actually done the transaction with this person, you've done some bits of work and they've delivered, and done some bits of work and they've delivered. So now you think that's good enough that you can align yourself with that person. So you can align yourself with that company. So you can align yourself with whatever's happening there because you personally know that person. Becomes a challenge though when that person is within a business or a company and that's your contact and that's who you've got the relationship with, and they leave. What happens then? What happens then? What do you do? So the personal is when you know somebody, you've come through that. Usually this way you'll sit down there and they'll help you problem solve. But it's problem solving not on a really deep level, it's problem solving on a more shallow level. Hey look, one of my photographers is down with the flu at the moment, half of the coast has got the flu at the moment, and I need someone. Is there someone that you can refer me to? This is the type of solution finding or innovation finding process. Hey look, and as this fellow from the other one, I've just lost all these. Do you know someone who can do fantastic data recovery? I need to have this done. So this is that very meaningful but shallow type personal one-on-one type one. The next one is collaborative reputational. This is where you know someone, you know they do a good job, and you work with them because of their reputation. You work with them because they've got a good reputation, you know, and there are what we call artefacts that tell you about this reputation. So, for example, I'm going to use Beefy's Pies, for example. I knew about Beefy's Pies before I even come to live on the Sunshine Coast. And always Beefy's Pies get this great, we've won this award type process. So you believe that you pull in the reputation from other areas. And you rely on the reputation that you have built with this person and also the reputation of that company with that person. So you'll engage with them. There's a cupcake place on the coast, and one of my clients said to me, hey look, I need some cupcakes. And I said, what do you need them for? I'm going to visit some new clients. I said, look, I tell you where to get them from. This particular organisation does them and they'll do them with your logo. So this is the type of thing, because they've got a reputation. They also sponsored me my cancer morning tea. But also when you start looking at that process, what is it? There's a reputation out there. So when you start looking at that process, you get reputational based. And so this is where, when you start looking at it, you might do some research on that person. You might start looking at what happens in that you can have that reputation with that person. Anyone got some examples of that? You start looking at it. Yeah?
I'm a property stylist, so I decorate houses when they're for sale, and to have all the furniture that I need to fill multiple houses, it's a lot of furniture and you just can't have that much stuff. So I actually work with Domain.
Yep.
Domain have a very high-end product, they've got their reputation, so I know that I'm in the same hands when I hire furniture from their company to put in the houses that I stage.
So there's a reputation-based trust there. So you look at that. Thank you. The next one is a collaborative-based trust, and I realise that I've got a challenge here now because I've told you the answer. Collaborative-based trust is experience. So you look at that from an experience perspective. What has that person done before? And usually we look at this from a JV. This is where joint ventures often come out. So I've been fortunate to work on some pretty major infrastructure projects. Probably the biggest one of them was $1 billion project, and it had more than several, there were a lot of companies working on that. So when you start looking at bidding for big jobs like that, one company can't do it. And any people that spend money on that is usually the government. So it's a risk mitigation strategy for the government not to have one company. So they have different companies, and these companies have to work together. So that's where they start doing the experience. We know because you were the subcontractor on another job or you did this. On infrastructure, this is very, very strong. So you might have, there was another job I was, the big one was a rail job. And there was another one I was on, was a road job. It was about 500 million or 450 million or something, I can't remember. Just rolls off your tongue after a while. A lot of money, so you just sort of pretend it's monopoly. But these, it was a road job, so they had to build bridges and they had to lay pavement. By the way, bitumen's called pavement in the world. They had to lay pavement, landscaping, those sorts of things. So they had someone who was a company that did civil work, so they had civil equipment. There was someone that was a structural, did structures, so the bridges and stuff like that. So when you start looking at, can't remember the strength of the third one, there were three of them anyway. And they come together, and this is where you have to have the strength in understanding and trusting the other organisation. Why? Because you're bringing your systems together. You're going to be working together for the next 2 or 3 or whatever years. You know, the big Caloundra interchange up there, 980 million or something, nearly $1 billion. It didn't quite make the billion. It was $1 billion, and they were smart enough and brought it down. So it's just under $1 billion, that job. Nice job to get, but it's not one company that's got it. It's that joint process. So they also now have to have joint systems, joint procedures, joint safety things. So when you start getting that experience on that, that's when you start looking at that type of collaborative-based trust. Interesting, isn't it? So what does this all mean? And I'm going to come to what this all means for your businesses in a minute. But when you start looking at experience-based trust. Anyone want to have a shot of what I call advocacy-based trust? Advocacy-based trust.
Speaking on behalf of others.
Sorry?
Advocating and speaking on behalf of others.
Yeah.
Just doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where someone rings you up and you recommend somebody else and reason why you recommend them. So you advocate. And I was, to tell you a funny story, I'm good at telling stories, I'll tell you this funny story. In the late 90s, 98 or 99 or something like that, I can't remember now, I was a finalist in the Telstra Businesswoman of the Year. And I went for the interview. It's a fairly harrowing type of thing. You know, those butterflies are not getting information at all. And you sit there, and I remember the lady who was the marketing specialist. And her name was Moira. And Moira said, "Now Brenda, tell me what's in your marketing plan." And I said, "Moira, I don't have one." To which she was astounded and astonished, and how can you possibly run a business and market a business without a marketing plan? And I said, because all my business is through advocacy. Well, you know, I don't know if you've ever been through this process, but they have a scoring sheet, and the scoring gives you, you know, you have so much out of 10. And I have this innate ability to be able to read and write upside down. And so I'm watching her, and I sort of can see, you know, you'll see this distance, and I see her put a big cross like that and a big 0. I was heartbroken. Why do you think I was heartbroken?
She didn't understand.
Why else?
Best marketing you have.
Because you can have the best written marketing plan, but it means absolutely nothing unless it gets implemented. And if you have advocacy-based trust, then, and my business was built on advocacy. In other words, people would ring up and ask us to do things. We did not have to advertise. And so I went on to tell Moira this story. I said, Moira, let me give you an example after I'd seen this and recovered very quickly. I said, let me give you an example of some reason I don't have a marketing plan. And I named a particular company. I said, they rang up and asked if we could do some work for them. And I said, yes, when did you want it done? And they said, well, they gave me a time frame, and I said that Sue, one of our staff, could go and do that. And they said, no, we want you. They wanted me particularly. It was working with some people with disabilities, and it's not that Sue couldn't, it's just that I'd done work with them before. And so the people with the disabilities or impairments, whatever you like to call, had related to me before, and they thought that was an easier transition. So I said, they said no, they would wait to me, which I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not available for 6 weeks. And they said, that's okay, we will wait. So I went on to tell Moira this story. She didn't change her mind. I still got a 0. But you know, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot that you have to have self-confidence and you have to have confidence in yourself. And it also taught me that you can have the best written plan, of which I didn't, but advocacy-based trust is the strongest form of trust. And I didn't mind not winning. The lady that won, phenomenal. She did a phenomenal job and she deserved to win. But gee, I really wanted to have a chat with Moira. Because when you have advocacy-based trust, what you're doing is you're advocating for somebody else on behalf of that. And you don't have to do it, you can do it subtly, like I've done it with Ben, because I think he's fantastic. And so what you do, and with Stephen, who does, Stephen Rice by the way, who does phenomenal stuff. So what happens is you trust these people, and under advocacy-based trust, you can tell other people without having to make a big deal about it. Advocacy-based trust.